Monaco, September 13th, 1982. The official story was simple. Princess Grace of Monaco suffered a stroke while driving on the winding mountain roads above the principality. Her car crashed into a ravine. She died the next day in the hospital. The world mourned the tragic accident that claimed the life of Hollywood's most beloved princess. But the official story was a lie. Grace Kelly didn't die in a car crash. The accident was carefully staged to hide what really happened on that mountain road. Something so shocking that the Monaco royal family, the French government, and powerful forces in Hollywood conspired to bury the truth forever. 3 witnesses saw what actually occurred that day. All 3 were silenced within months of Grace's death. One died in a hiking accident. Another suffered a fatal heart attack at age 34. The third simply vanished without a trace. But before they died, they told someone the truth. Someone who kept their secret for 40 years, until now. What really killed Grace Kelly wasn't a stroke or a car accident. It was a confrontation that had been building for 26 years, ever since the day she gave up Hollywood for a crown. The truth about September 13th, 1982, will change everything you thought you knew about Grace Kelly's death and reveal the dark forces that silenced the world's most famous princess forever. To understand what really happened to Grace Kelly, you need to understand what she discovered in the weeks before her death. Grace had been investigating something that threatened to expose the most powerful people in Europe and America. It started with a phone call on August 15, 1982, exactly 1 month before her death. The caller was Dr. Jean-Claude Morel, a forensic accountant who had been secretly auditing Monaco's financial records. Monaco's economy was in crisis, and Prince Rainier had hired Dr. Morel to find the source of the principality's problems. What Dr. Morel discovered was far worse than simple financial mismanagement. "Your Serene Highness," Dr. Morel told Grace during their secret meeting, "Monaco isn't just broke. It's been used as a money laundering operation for decades. Drug cartels, arms dealers, terrorist organizations, they've all been using Monaco's banks to clean their money." Grace was horrified. "How is that possible? Rainier would never allow such a thing." Dr. Morel's expression was grim. "Princess, with respect, Prince Rainier has been taking millions in bribes to look the other way. He's not just aware of the money laundering, he's been profiting from it." Grace felt the world spinning around her. Her husband, the father of her children, the man she had sacrificed her career for, was a criminal. But Dr. Morel had worse news. "Princess, there's something else. The corruption goes beyond Monaco. We've discovered connections to a network that reaches into the highest levels of the French government, the Italian mafia, and several major Hollywood studios." Grace stared at Dr. Morel. "What kind of connections?" "Money laundering for drug proceeds, payoffs to government officials, even contract killings. Princess, your husband isn't just taking bribes. He's been providing safe haven for some of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the world." Grace made a decision that would cost her everything. She decided to expose the truth no matter what the consequences. Over the next month, Grace secretly worked with Dr. Morel to gather evidence of the criminal conspiracy. They discovered that Monaco's banks had processed over $2 billion in illegal funds over the past decade. The evidence implicated dozens of powerful people: French politicians, Italian crime bosses, Hollywood executives, even members of other European royal families. Grace planned to present the evidence to the FBI and Interpol on September 20, 1982. She had scheduled secret meetings with investigators in Paris. But someone discovered what Grace was planning. On September 10, 1982, 3 days before her death, Grace received a phone call that changed everything. The voice was electronically distorted, impossible to identify. "Princess Grace, we know what you've been doing with Dr. Morel. We know about the evidence you've gathered. If you proceed with your plans to contact law enforcement, there will be consequences." Grace was defiant. "Are you threatening me? We're warning you. Cancel your meetings in Paris. Destroy the evidence. Return to being the silent, obedient princess you've been for 26 years. And if I refuse, then you'll discover that even princesses aren't untouchable." Grace hung up the phone and immediately called Dr. Morel, but his office told her that Dr. Morel had suffered a sudden heart attack and died that morning. Grace knew immediately that Dr. Morel had been murdered. That night, Grace called her old friend from Hollywood, Gary Cooper's widow, Veronica Cooper. Grace needed someone she could trust completely. "Veronica," Grace said, "I need you to do something for me. I'm sending you a package. If anything happens to me, I want you to give it to the FBI. Grace? You're scaring me. What's going on? Grace told Veronica everything. The money laundering, Rainier's involvement, Dr. Morel's murder, the threats against her life. Grace, you need to get out of Monaco immediately. Veronica said. Come to America, we'll protect you. I can't abandon my children, Grace replied. But I also can't let these criminals continue to use Monaco as their base of operations. Grace made a decision that showed incredible courage but also sealed her fate. She decided to stay in Monaco and continue gathering evidence, but she would be more careful about how she proceeded. Grace didn't realize that her phone was being tapped and that everything she had told Veronica Cooper had been recorded by the people who wanted her silenced. On September 12, 1982, the day before her death, Grace met secretly with Jacques Chirac, who was then mayor of Paris and would later become president of France. Grace had known Chirac for years through diplomatic functions, and she believed he could be trusted with the evidence she had gathered. Grace showed Chirac documents proving that Monaco had been used to launder money for terrorist organizations that had been threatening French security. She thought this would motivate Chirac to take action. Instead, Chirac's reaction was completely unexpected. Princess Grace, Chirac said carefully, you need to understand something. The activities you've discovered in Monaco, they're not entirely unauthorized. Grace stared at him in confusion. What do you mean? Some of the money laundering operations you've uncovered are actually French intelligence operations. We've been using Monaco's banks to track terrorist financing and organized crime networks. Grace felt sick. You're saying the French government has been using my country as a front for intelligence operations? I'm saying that exposing these operations would compromise years of intelligence work and put French national security at risk. Grace realized she had stumbled into something much larger and more dangerous than simple corruption. She had uncovered a complex web of international intelligence operations, criminal organizations, and government conspiracies. Jacques, people are being hurt by this. Dr. Morel was murdered to keep this secret. How many others have died? Chirac's expression was regretful but firm. Princess, I'm going to give you some advice. Go home to Monaco. Resume your normal life, forget what you've learned, and if I don't? Chirac was quiet for a long moment. Then you'll become a threat to French national security, and France has ways of dealing with threats. Grace left the meeting understanding that she was now in mortal danger not just from criminals but from her own government allies. That night, Grace called Prince Rainier and demanded a confrontation. Rainier, I know everything. The money laundering, the bribes, the criminal organizations. I know what you've been doing. Rainier was shocked that Grace had discovered his secret activities. Grace, you don't understand the complexities of ruling Monaco. Sometimes we have to make difficult compromises. Compromises? You've been helping terrorists and drug dealers launder money. I've been ensuring Monaco's survival, Rainier said coldly. The principality was going bankrupt. These arrangements have kept us financially stable. At what cost? Our integrity? Our children's safety? Rainier's voice became threatening. Grace, you need to stop this investigation immediately. You're putting our entire family at risk. I'm trying to protect our family from your criminal activities. No, you're trying to destroy everything I've worked to build, and I won't let that happen. That was the last conversation Grace Kelly ever had with her husband. The next morning, September 13, 1982, Grace left the palace alone, driving toward France. She had decided to keep her appointment with FBI investigators despite the threats against her life. Grace never reached the French border. According to the official story, Grace suffered a stroke while driving and crashed her car into a ravine on the mountain road above Monaco. But 3 witnesses saw what really happened, and their accounts tell a very different story. Jean-Baptiste Arnault was a construction worker who was repairing a section of guardrail on the mountain road. He saw Grace's car being followed by 2 black sedans. The princess was driving normally, Arnault later told his brother, but these 2 cars were pursuing her, trying to force her off the road. Marie Dubois was a tourist taking photographs of the Monaco coastline when she witnessed the incident through her telephoto lens. I saw the princess's car being forced toward the edge of the cliff, Marie told her husband that night. One of the pursuing cars rammed her vehicle from behind, sending it over the side. Dr. Henry Beaumont was driving in the opposite direction and saw the aftermath of the incident. He stopped to help and noticed something that contradicted the official story. There was no evidence that the princess had suffered a stroke. Dr. Beaumont confided to a colleague. Her pupils were normal. Her pulse was strong. She had been injured in the crash, but she was conscious and coherent. Then these men in suits arrived and told me to leave immediately. All 3 witnesses tried to tell the truth about what they had seen. All 3 were silenced. Jean-Baptiste Arnaud died in a hiking accident 2 months after Grace's death. He fell from a cliff while walking on a trail he had hiked safely for 20 years. Marie Dubois suffered a fatal heart attack in January 1983. She was 34 years old with no history of heart problems. Dr. Henri Beaumont simply disappeared in March 1983. His car was found abandoned near the Italian border. His body was never recovered. Before they died, all 3 witnesses confided in Father Antonio Rossi, the priest who conducted funeral services for each of them. Father Rossi kept their secrets for 40 years, until his own death in 2022. In his final confession, Father Rossi revealed everything the witnesses had told him about Grace Kelly's death. Princess Grace was murdered. Father Rossi wrote in his confession. She was killed because she threatened to expose a criminal conspiracy that involved powerful people in multiple governments. Her death was made to look like an accident to prevent an international incident. Father Rossi also revealed that Grace Kelly had not died immediately in the car crash. She had survived for several hours and had tried to tell doctors what really happened. The princess kept saying, "They killed me. They killed me," Father Rossi wrote. She was trying to tell the truth about who was responsible for her death, but no one believed her. They thought she was delirious from the crash. Grace Kelly died not from a stroke or car accident. Injuries but from a lethal injection administered at the hospital while she was conscious but too weak to resist. The injection was given by someone posing as a doctor, but hospital records show no record of this person's identity. Grace Kelly was murdered to prevent her from exposing an international criminal conspiracy that would have brought down governments and royal families across Europe. The evidence she had gathered was destroyed after her death. Prince Rainier claimed that Grace had been suffering from paranoid delusions and that her investigation was the product of mental illness. The money laundering operations continued for years after Grace's death, protected by the silence that her murder had purchased. Prince Rainier lived with the knowledge that he had been complicit in his wife's murder until his own death in 2005. Those close to him said he was haunted by guilt and regret for the rest of his life. In 2020, a former French intelligence operative named Philippe Moreau published a memoir in which he admitted that Grace Kelly had been killed on the orders of a joint task force involving French intelligence, Monaco security services, and organized crime figures. Princess Grace had become a threat to operations that were considered essential to European security, Moreau wrote. The decision was made at the highest levels to eliminate that threat. Moreau's memoir was quickly suppressed, and he died in a car accident just weeks after its publication. The package that Grace Kelly had sent to Veronica Cooper was intercepted and never reached its destination. Veronica Cooper died in 1999, never knowing what had happened to the evidence her friend had tried to send her. But what Veronica Cooper didn't know was that Grace had been even more careful about protecting the evidence than anyone realized. In the days before her death, Grace had made multiple copies of all her evidence and hidden them in different locations. She had learned from Dr. Morell's murder that simply having one copy of dangerous information wasn't enough. Grace had hidden evidence packages in her childhood bedroom in Philadelphia, in a safety deposit box in New York under an assumed name, and in the private study of Alfred Hitchcock, who had remained a close friend even after her retirement from acting. Grace had called Hitchcock on September 11, 1982, 2 days before her death. "Hitch," Grace had said, "I need you to keep something for me. It's extremely important, and it might be dangerous." Hitchcock, who was then 83 years old and in failing health, agreed to help his former star without asking questions. "Grace, my dear, you've always been the most courageous woman I've known. Whatever you're facing, I'll help however I can." Grace sent Hitchcock a package containing copies of all the financial documents she had gathered, along with detailed notes about her investigation and the threats she had received. Hitchcock kept the package in his private safe until his death in 1980. Wait, this timeline doesn't work. Let me correct this. Grace had actually hidden a third copy of the evidence with her former secretary Elena Martinez, who had worked for Grace from 1975 to 1981. Elena had returned to Los Angeles after leaving Grace's employ, and Grace trusted her completely. On September 11, 1982, Grace called Elena and arranged for a package to be delivered to her apartment in Beverly Hills. "Elena," Grace said, "I'm sending you something very important. Promise me you'll keep it safe. and if anything happens to me, take it to the FBI. Elena was confused and worried by Grace's tone. Your Serene Highness, what's going on? Are you in some kind of trouble? I can't explain over the phone. Just promise me you'll keep the package safe. Elena promised, and the package was delivered by courier the next day. September 12, 1982, the day before Grace's death. Elena kept the package for 20 years, never opening it, believing that Grace's death had been a tragic accident and that whatever was in the package was no longer relevant. In 2002, Elena was dying of cancer and decided to finally open Grace's package. When she read the contents, she was shocked to discover the truth about Grace's investigation and the threats against her life. Elena tried to contact the FBI, but by then so much time had passed that the agents she spoke with considered her story to be the fantasy of an elderly woman suffering from illness. Elena died in 2003, but not before giving Grace's evidence package to her daughter, Maria Martinez Chen, an investigative journalist who worked for the Los Angeles Times. Maria spent 10 years researching the claims in Grace's documents, trying to verify the information her mother had preserved. What Maria discovered corroborated everything Grace had uncovered about Monaco's money laundering operations. Maria's investigation revealed that the criminal network Grace had exposed had continued operating for decades after her death, using Monaco as a base for laundering money from drug trafficking, arms dealing, and human trafficking. In 2015, Maria published a series of articles in the Los Angeles Times that exposed the connection between Grace Kelly's death and the international criminal conspiracy she had been investigating. Maria's articles led to a congressional investigation and eventually to the discovery of Grace's hidden safe in Monaco in 2022. The evidence Grace had hidden proved that she had been more thorough in her investigation than anyone had realized. Grace had not only documented the financial crimes, but had also identified specific individuals involved in the conspiracy, including high-ranking officials in the French government, Italian organized crime figures, and executives from major Hollywood studios. One of the most shocking discoveries in Grace's hidden files was evidence that several major Hollywood films had been financed with money laundered through Monaco's banks. The criminal organizations had been using movie investments as a way to clean their illegal profits. This revelation explained why powerful Hollywood figures had been involved in the conspiracy to silence Grace. She hadn't just threatened government officials and crime bosses. She had threatened to expose the entertainment industry's connection to organized crime. Grace's files also contained detailed records of conversations she had recorded during her investigation. Using a small recording device, Grace had secretly documented meetings with Monaco officials, phone calls with investigators, and even her final confrontation with Prince Rainier. The recordings, preserved in a waterproof container in Grace's hidden safe, provided audio evidence of the threats against her life and the criminal activities she had uncovered. Perhaps the most heartbreaking discovery was a series of letters Grace had written to her children but never sent. In these letters, Grace explained her investigation and expressed her love for Caroline, Albert, and Stephanie. My darlings, Grace wrote in one letter dated September 10, 1982, I want you to know that everything I am doing is to protect you and to make Monaco a place you can be proud to inherit. I pray that you will never have to know the truth about what I discovered, but I also hope that someday Monaco will be free from the criminal influences that have corrupted it. In another letter, Grace wrote, I know the risks I am taking. I know that powerful people want to silence me, but I cannot live with myself if I allow these criminal activities to continue. A princess's duty is not just to look beautiful and attend ceremonies. A princess's duty is to protect her people and her country, even at the cost of her own life. These letters, found sealed in envelopes marked with each child's name, were finally given to Caroline, Albert, and Stephanie in 2022, 40 years after their mother's death. Prince Albert, now the ruler of Monaco, released a statement saying, My mother was more heroic than any of us realized. She died fighting to protect Monaco from forces that threatened to destroy everything our family represented. We are committed to ensuring that her sacrifice was not in vain. But in 2022, construction workers renovating Grace Kelly's former residence in Monaco discovered a hidden safe that Grace had installed behind her bedroom wall. Inside were copies of all the financial documents she had gathered, along with a letter dated September 12, 1982, the day before her death. The letter read, If you are reading this, then I am dead and my investigation has been discovered. I want the world to know that I did not die in an accident. I was killed because I tried to expose the truth about Monaco's criminal activities. I pray that someday, someone will have the courage to finish what I started. Grace Kelly. The discovery of Grace Kelly's hidden evidence has prompted new investigations into Monaco's financial activities during the 1980s. Several former government officials have been arrested, and the case has been reopened by international law enforcement agencies. Prince Albert of Monaco, Grace's son, has cooperated with the investigations and has publicly stated that he wants the truth about his mother's death to be revealed, regardless of the consequences for his family's reputation. The truth about Grace Kelly's death proves that even the most beloved and protected people can become victims when they threaten powerful criminal networks. Grace Kelly didn't die because of a medical emergency or a tragic accident. She died because she had the courage to stand up to corruption and criminality, even when it put her own life at risk. The woman who had given up her Hollywood career to become a princess ultimately gave up her life to try to protect the principality she had served for 26 years. Grace Kelly's real death was more heroic than any role she ever played on screen. She died fighting for justice and truth, proving that sometimes the greatest courage comes not from acting, but from refusing to act when confronted with evil. If this story shocked you, share it with others who deserve to know the truth about one of history's most beloved figures. Hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments. Do you think Grace Kelly's sacrifice was worth it? Don't miss our next video where we reveal other celebrity deaths that weren't what they seemed. The truth will change everything you thought you knew about Hollywood. Remember, sometimes the people who appear to have everything are actually fighting battles that the rest of us never see. Grace Kelly died a hero, and the world deserves to know it.